Have you ever met someone who seems calm, distant, and almost unreachable, yet somehow you feel their care in the smallest, quietest ways? They don't chase, they don't cling, and they don't confess easily. But behind that silence, there's something powerful unfolding. Because when an avoidant loves, it's not through words, it's through restraint. Their love doesn't shout, it whispers. It hides behind space, but it never truly leaves. Love hidden behind distance is one of the most misunderstood expressions of affection, especially when it comes from someone with avoidant tendencies. For most people, love looks like closeness, reassurance, and emotional openness. But for the avoidant, love often hides behind silence, space, and restraint. It is not that they feel less, it's that they feel too much and don't know how to navigate the intensity that comes with connection. Their instinct is to protect themselves from the pain of dependency, so they create emotional distance not out of coldness but out of fear. Yet within that distance lies their most honest version of love. When an avoidant person begins to care, their first reaction isn't to move toward, it's to step back and observe, to manage the overwhelming flood of feelings that closeness awakens in them. You can often see this love in the way they remember small details about you even after periods of silence. They may not say much, but they'll quietly recall your favorite song, the way you take your coffee, or the things that make you anxious. These are not random acts of memory. They are evidence of attention. In their world, love is not loud. It's quiet observation, subtle protection, and restrained affection. The avoidant's heart speaks through actions that don't demand recognition. They might offer help without being asked or check in without appearing too interested. To them, this balance between care and control keeps their emotions safe, yet it also allows love to exist in a form they can manage. Their distance is not rejection, it's the boundary where their love breathes. The avoidant sees love as something sacred, almost dangerous, because it threatens the independence that has always kept them emotionally safe. When they choose to stay in touch despite discomfort, when they don't completely disappear even though their instinct tells them to, that is their way of saying, "You matter." Their silence, which might feel like neglect to others, is often the calm space they need to process emotions they haven't yet learned to express. They love through restraint, believing that pulling back will prevent them from hurting or being hurt. Sometimes love shows up as patience, not pursuit. An avoidant person might not chase after affection, but they will keep returning when they could easily walk away. They will hold space for you in their own quiet way, observing from a distance yet never fully detaching. This is not emotional absence, it's emotional endurance. When they choose to stay even in silence, when they allow you to exist in their space without needing to control the connection, that is their love language. It is not loud, not easily seen, but profoundly real. Love for them isn't about merging with another. It's about daring to remain close without losing themselves. It's the art of loving quietly, where distance doesn't mean indifference, but rather the safest way they know to keep their heart open without breaking. Vulnerability is the language of love that feels most foreign to the avoidant heart. To most people, opening up comes naturally when they trust someone, but for the avoidant, vulnerability feels like exposure, a threat to the fragile sense of control they've built to survive. Their life has often been shaped by experiences that taught them dependence equals danger, that needing someone leads to disappointment or loss. So when they begin to show small cracks in their emotional armor, when they start revealing fragments of their inner world, it isn't weakness, it's love. It's a deeply courageous act masked by hesitation and subtlety. The avoidant may not say, "I love you," outright, but they might tell you a painful memory, share a private thought, or confess a fear. In their world, these small moments are monumental because every disclosure feels like handing over a part of themselves they've kept hidden for years. You'll notice their vulnerability in the pauses between words, in the way they hesitate before speaking truths they've never shared. They often test safety first, dropping small hints to see how you'll respond. If you listen without judgment, they gradually unfold, not through grand gestures, but through quiet honesty. To them, love is not proven through constant affection, but through the bravery of letting someone see what they've spent a lifetime hiding. The first time they admit they don't have all the answers, the first time they allow you to see their uncertainty, that's when their love begins to surface. Their trust is earned slowly, carved out of moments of mutual understanding rather than declarations. For an avoidant, vulnerability is love's most dangerous territory. It means surrendering control, allowing someone else to influence their emotional state, and confronting the fear of abandonment that lives beneath their calm exterior. When they start to open up, they are battling their deepest instincts. Every shared thought feels like a risk, every emotional admission a potential wound, but they take that risk because something in them recognizes the value of connection, even if it terrifies them. That moment when they stop deflecting, stop changing the subject, and simply allow themselves to be seen, that is love in its purest form for them. Their vulnerability might also appear through small apologies, soft admissions of fault, or a quiet willingness to repair after conflict. These are not easy acts for someone used to emotional distance. When they begin to choose connection over avoidance, even for a brief moment, it's because love has begun to override fear. They might not express it perfectly, and their openness might come and go in waves, but each return to honesty marks growth. Every time they let down their guard, even slightly, they are choosing to trust that not all closeness leads to pain. Vulnerability for them is an ongoing act of love, a process of learning that being known doesn't always mean being hurt. When they allow someone to see their hidden softness, they are silently saying, "You are safe enough for me to be real." Consistency is the quiet heartbeat of love for someone with avoidant tendencies. It rarely comes in the form of romantic gestures or constant communication, but rather through small, steady acts that show they are trying to stay connected, even when closeness feels uncomfortable. For an avoidant, consistency requires effort because their natural response to emotional intensity is withdrawal. When they begin to choose showing up over disappearing, reliability over avoidance, that is their version of love. They might not express affection in words or through open emotional availability, but their steady presence speaks louder than any confession could. To them, being consistent means fighting against their instinct to run the moment things get real. It is love disguised as endurance. When they start remembering details, checking in periodically, or making quiet efforts to maintain contact, they are revealing that they care. These actions might seem insignificant to others, but for the avoidant, they carry deep meaning. Each message they send, each time they follow through on a promise, each moment they choose to stay in touch instead of retreating into solitude is an emotional victory. Their consistency isn't always smooth or predictable. It may come with pauses and silences, but it is built on the choice to return. In a world where withdrawal once felt safer than connection, their decision to keep showing up is love expressed through discipline rather than impulse. Avoidants often struggle with emotional rhythm. They don't always move in sync with others. Yet when they love, they begin to develop a sense of loyalty that doesn't depend on comfort. They learn to hold space for the relationship even when it stirs anxiety. You'll see it in the way they listen more attentively, follow up on things you've mentioned, or keep a promise even when they'd rather retreat. Their love becomes a quiet consistency, unspoken, unadvertised, but deeply intentional. It is not fueled by passion alone, but by a sense of responsibility and care that surprises even them. Their version of devotion isn't in constant closeness, but in the subtle continuity that survives the silence. Sometimes their consistency appears in restraint rather than reaction. When they choose not to argue impulsively, when they take time to process instead of shutting down completely, that is emotional progress. They are learning to remain present even in discomfort, which for them is a profound form of love. Avoidants don't fall in love and suddenly become expressive. They love by learning to stay, to communicate, to be reliable in their own way. They begin to show up not because they've conquered fear, but because love has become stronger than their avoidance. Each act of consistency is a quiet declaration, I'm trying to be here. For an avoidant, that effort is sacred. It means they value the connection enough to resist the urge to disappear. Love for them is not about comfort. It's about the courage to keep choosing the relationship even when distance feels safer. Conflict for someone with avoidant tendencies is not just an argument. It's a moment of truth. For most people, fighting or expressing frustration is simply a normal part of a relationship. But for the avoidant, conflict represents emotional exposure, vulnerability, and the risk of being trapped in emotional chaos. Their instinct has always been to withdraw when things become intense, to protect their inner world by escaping connection. So when an avoidant begins to stay and engage, when they choose to face discomfort rather than retreat into silence, it's not a sign of indifference, it's a sign of love. Their willingness to argue, to discuss, or even to express irritation means they care enough to remain emotionally present. Avoidants don't fight for relationships they've already detached from. They only stay in the arena of conflict when someone matters deeply to them. Engaging in conflict for an avoidant is an act of courage because it goes against everything their protective instincts tell them to do. They were conditioned to believe that conflict destroys closeness, that emotional tension leads to rejection or loss. So they learned to avoid it, to stay quiet, to pretend nothing's wrong, to disappear until the storm passes. But when they begin to challenge that pattern, when they start speaking up, it's because something inside them values the connection more than the comfort of avoidance. They begin to understand that conflict can also mean care, that disagreement doesn't always mean danger. For them, staying and confronting emotional discomfort is an act of love disguised as struggle. You can see this love in the way they start to explain themselves instead of shutting down. They may still speak cautiously, still struggle to articulate feelings, but their effort to communicate reveals their desire to be understood. They might take time to respond, process things slowly, or appear distant at first, yet they return to the conversation once they feel safe. This returning is love. It's the avoidance way of saying, I'm trying to do this differently. Their effort to discuss rather than disappear shows that they are beginning to replace fear with trust. Conflict becomes less about winning and more about preserving the connection they once would have abandoned. Their love also shows in the restraint they practice during these moments. When an avoidant stays calm instead of defensive, listens instead of fleeing, and expresses frustration without ending the relationship, that is growth. They are learning that love doesn't have to mean losing themselves. They are learning that relationships can withstand imperfection. Each time they stay during discomfort, each time they try to repair instead of run, they are redefining love in their own language. For them, conflict becomes proof of commitment. It means they believe the bond is strong enough to handle honesty. Love, for an avoidant, is not the absence of tension but the courage to remain when it arises. It's choosing connection over escape, even when every part of them wants to turn away. Love for an avoidant person is not about possession or control. It is about freedom, balance, and respect for individuality. To them, love that suffocates or demands constant emotional presence feels threatening rather than comforting. Their sense of safety is rooted in autonomy, and the moment they feel their independence slipping away, their defenses rise. Yet when they begin to love, truly love, something changes in the way they view closeness. Instead of seeing it as a trap, they start to see it as coexistence. Two people who can be deeply connected while still remaining themselves. This is the kind of love that feels genuine to the avoidant heart. Love that doesn't demand merging. Love that allows both people to breathe without fear of losing their identity. In the early stages of connection, avoidants often equate closeness with danger because it reminds them of times they felt overwhelmed or unseen. They have learned to protect their inner world by creating distance, believing that love and freedom cannot exist together. But when they meet someone who respects their boundaries instead of chasing them, their understanding of love begins to evolve. They start to realize that true affection doesn't require constant proximity. It thrives on trust, not control. When they choose to stay close without running, when they allow someone into their world without feeling consumed, it's a quiet act of love. They are saying, without words, "I can be myself here." For them, love as freedom means giving without losing, caring without clinging, and choosing connection instead of compulsion. They don't want to be needed. They want to be chosen. So, when an avoidant begins to share their time willingly, when they initiate contact not out of obligation but genuine desire, it means something profound. They are no longer loving from fear, they are loving from choice. They will start to allow emotional intimacy without resisting it, trusting that their individuality won't disappear in the process. The greatest expression of love from an avoidant is not grand gestures, but quiet permission, for both people to exist fully and independently within the relationship. This kind of love is deeply mature because it understands that freedom and connection can coexist. An avoidant who has reached this stage doesn't run when things get intense. They pause, breathe, and communicate. They don't seek to control, nor do they allow themselves to be controlled. They find peace in knowing that love can be present even in distance, that closeness doesn't mean confinement. Their version of love honors both hearts equally. It is built on trust rather than fear, presence rather than possession. When they stop running, when they stop guarding their solitude like a fortress, it's not because they've lost their independence. It's because they've found someone who makes freedom and togetherness feel the same. That is the avoidant's purest form of love. A love that grows not from attachment, but from the quiet strength of mutual respect and emotional space. Love from an avoidant isn't the kind you immediately recognize. It's the kind you learn to feel in the spaces between connection and distance. It's in their quiet consistency, their hesitant vulnerability, their choice to stay even when fear tells them to run. Their love is freedom, not attachment, trust, not control. When an avoidant begins to act differently, to open, to stay, to trust, it's not because they've changed overnight, but because love has reached a depth that even fear can't silence. And that's when you realize the avoidant doesn't love less. They simply love quietly, in the only way their heart knows how, through courage disguised as calm and affection hidden behind distance.